And then it gives us a metaphor for how we, as believers of Jesus Christ, face the evil that's around us. And that evil is the whole armor of God. Now, metaphors can help us because they give us a sense. I remember a sermon preached on this. It's interesting, sometimes you get little, some sermons stick in your mind. Probably mine won't, but Judy Watt, associate pastor of the church I serve, in Evansville, right before I came here, preached on this. And she started out her sermon by putting on different hats. And sure enough, she raided my office before this, because I had these hats on my bookshelf. You know, it's kind of reminders to me about events in my life. The one hat was a hard hat that had a Rotary symbol on it, because I was the captain for Christmas in April in my Rotary Club, and they gave me this hat to thank me for the job I had done in restoring the house of a person who couldn't afford to do it herself. So that was one of the hats. And then another hat, I had 3 or 4 hats from various runs I did, like the New York Marathon, the Marine Corps Marathon. They give you these little hats to remind you of the race. And so those hats kind of were on my shelf to remind me of the things I had done and to keep it on, so that I would keep serving and giving to others in my life. Well, Paul gives us this metaphor of the whole armor of God. He says, put on the whole armor of God to face the wiles of evil in our time. And that's the metaphor that he gives us to both face it, that is defensively, and I believe also offensively, that is going towards evil, and we as believers not just defending against, but actively taking on the evil that is in our time. Well, what were those parts of the metaphor? The first one, he says, is put on the belt of truth. The belt of truth on a soldier's armor. The belt was what held up the whole armor. It was what everything hung on, that armor. And Paul says it's the helmet, or the belt of truth. And it comes from an interesting word